Let's just hold it for that at that thought. And you make an important point, and you say that India does have success stories. Of course it does. And let's face it, there are also startups which has very strong governance systems in place. Zerodha is one thing that comes directly to one's mind. And there are many others also that have very strong governance balances in place. That's well accepted. The point really is those that have not been held to account. Here's where the question is, Rahul Bajaj, is this a collapse of narrative as well? Is this a setback? Because let's just face it, when it comes to, say, the EV sector, when it comes to the transport sector, when it comes to, the new tech, the green tech sector, it's all, it has a huge scope, but it's massive, it's expensive, there's lots at stake. And with what's happened at Blusmart, is this going to affect the narrative around this as well? Around this tech sector particularly?
No, definitely. And more so when you brought in that point that Mr. Piyush Goyal, when he about investments in deep tech, and that's one of the pain areas that we've been saying, and we've been sending our recommendations to the government that deep tech needs heavy investments. EVs, green tech, and deep tech both, in fact, need heavy capital investments at the start, with the returns coming much later. And for any setback like this, the investors, the angels who come in at the start, who are ready to take the maximum risk when the company or the organization, the startup, is in an idea state, it is still trying to find how the product works in the market, they definitely would have this particular failure hanging in their minds and would be much more careful. Whereas we are looking at people to take, or the angels to take much more risk. So any of these particular incidents definitely is gonna have a negative impact on startups raising funds, especially for the for deep tech and green tech, where the incubation stage is much longer and the results come much later.
Right, and in fact, everybody would have said, I think everybody would agree, of course, those who have used the services of Blusmart are much smaller in compared to those who would not, because the scope and the expanse of the services itself is much less. But everybody I know who has used it has literally vouched for how efficient this has been. It's just an unfortunate collapse of how this has really turned out. But Lloyd Mathias, here's where my question is. Manish Bariyar said it's very hard to enforce strict measures of checks and balances. Let's just weigh in. He, of course, mentioned about some steps that US has taken for that matter, but let's just play it up. One, you do need a sense of autonomy when you are building a startup. And that's where you need to push back, possibly greater, any sort of nosy people or nosy regulators or nosy government for that matter. But then if you, in the name of autonomy, if this is what's happening to big names, to big unicorns for that matter, then there is a problem, isn't it?
Absolutely, Sneha. I just want to say a couple of things. I think one is, at the early stage when founding a company, it is in the nature of founders, it is the nature of entrepreneurs to take risks. That's what makes them entrepreneurs. They are going to take risks. They are occasionally going to cut corners. They're going to do things which are outside of the copybook, right? They will do things in a slightly strange manner. And I think that is unquestionable. Having said which, I think the maturity of a system comes when no sooner they get through, let's say, the first couple of rounds of funding, they address some of these core principles of governance. They go back and look at their books and make sure that they get everything, in a sense, as clear and as transparent as possible. I think that's the big watch out. And I just want to come back to the point you made. I think it's normal in any capitalistic system.
Do you have a system in India that does that?
Yeah, but
do you have a system in India, Mr. Mathias, that does that?
Yeah, but I think there's no hard system, hard coded. So I think Manish has a point. But what happens is it's the early stage investors who are involved, whose money is sunk into the business, who have skin in the game, who will then start cautioning the founders, who will build a semi advisory board, a non statutory, but an advisory board that will then caution young founders saying, you've got to get these premises and principles right. And if the founders don't listen, that's when they have to pull in their might or they have to pull out their money. Without that happening, lapses like this start compounding, and then you get too big. Right here, what we've seen in this specific instance is clearly that this was a great idea. Right? The fact that the promoters went rogue in a manner of speaking by taking money that was actually meant for investment in new EVs out of the company to use for other personal effects was where the big slip happens. But having said this, I want to make one point, Sneha, is that in any capitalistic society, there are bound to be business failures, bad business models, changes in technology. But when governance causes failure, when personal integrity causes failure, that is a cause for alarm. And that, as Manish rightly pointed out, is something that we have to watch out for. And therefore, we have to build robust systems. So therefore, the independent directors in the parent holding company, Gensol, have to be made liable in terms of how did they not ask for these questions when the company took a loan from two big government agencies of 958 crores and used only 2/3 of that to buy cars. And a lot of the other money seemed to be siphoned off towards apartments and golf kits and such like. I think that's where there's been a complete lapse. And therefore, these people have to be made liable and have to be made responsible, not, of course, excluding the promoters who, in this case, themselves seem to have gone awry.
Right. I think important points made by all of you. And